Admiral Blake gazed through the enormous viewport of Orbital Station 7, his eyes fixed on New Terra's rotating sphere of blue and green far below. 6,000 years had passed since the galaxy last knew conflict. 6 millennia since weapons fired in hatred, since starships burst apart in the emptiness between worlds. His memories held echoes of his grandfather's tales from those ancient conflicts, stories that now seemed more like myths than history. Accounts of humanity battling alien empires, desperate skirmishes fought across the void. Yet these were merely legends now. The true universe was calm, secure, and frankly dull if Blake admitted it to himself. Lieutenant Davis approached with her data pad, announcing the morning briefing. She couldn't have been older than 25. Her entire life lived in an era where genuine danger was forgotten. Her uniform looked immaculate, her expression cheerful. Like the rest of the crew, she viewed their defense post as an undemanding assignment, a station where events simply never occurred. Blake asked about any issues, expecting the usual nothing. Davis recited the standard report: merchant vessels arriving and departing, mining craft heading toward distant asteroids, another peaceful transmission from the Galactic Council to frontier settlements. She paused, mentioning that Captain Ross was inquiring about the weapons grid once more. Blake couldn't help smiling. Ross had spent months pushing for modernization of their antiquated defense arrays. The captain genuinely believed combat might become necessary someday. Most considered Ross delusional. Blake wasn't entirely convinced of that. He told Davis to schedule another discussion with Ross for the following week. The peaceful era had been prosperous for mankind. Humanity had entered the Galactic Coalition as newcomers, absorbing wisdom from ancient races who'd mastered coexistence without warfare. 17 species had constructed something magnificent together: commerce, research, culture, ideas. Armed conflict belonged to forgotten ages. Yet Blake's mind kept returning to his grandfather's warning: tranquility never endures forever. Something inevitably shatters it. Deep within the station's communications hub, Operator Wells was having an unremarkable shift. Her job involved monitoring deep space detection systems, searching for anomalies. Mostly she observed empty darkness. Occasionally a wandering asteroid appeared, once a rogue comet. Nothing remarkable ever materialized at the rim of charted territory. That's why she nearly dismissed the reading initially. A tiny signal appeared on her display, so distant it barely registered. Likely just another rock. She flagged it for future analysis and returned to her novel. The Coalition had granted humanity access to millennia of literature from throughout the stars. She was absorbed in a romance from the gentle avian beings of Kepler Prime. 20 minutes elapsed before the signal grew larger. Wells frowned, running the scan once more. The object was accelerating directly toward their position. She verified the data twice, then a third time. Vessels this remote should broadcast identification codes. This one transmitted nothing. She instructed the computer to identify the unknown contact. The system replied that identification was impossible. The object matched no recognized design patterns. Wells felt something cold settle in her gut. She contacted her supervisor immediately. Martinez, who'd worked communications for 15 years, had never encountered anything unexplainable. He assumed it was probably a lost cargo hauler and instructed Wells to transmit the standard protocol. Wells sent out the Coalition's automated greeting to the unidentified craft, requesting identification and stated purpose within Coalition territory. Silence followed. Martinez told her to broadcast again. Still nothing came back. Wells said the contact was expanding rapidly on her sensors. Martinez examined her display and felt his blood freeze. The unknown object wasn't simply large, it was enormous. Larger than any Coalition vessel, and it kept growing on the sensors, which meant additional contacts were materializing behind it. He ordered Wells to summon Admiral Blake immediately. Blake arrived 5 minutes later, his morning coffee still in hand. He studied the sensor array and set down his cup very deliberately. He asked for the count. Wells reported 50 contacts so far, possibly more still emerging from deep space. Blake inquired whether they'd responded to transmissions. Wells confirmed complete silence. Blake stared at the display before him. In 6,000 years of harmony, nothing like this formation had been witnessed. Unknown vessels traveling in coordinated patterns, ignoring all communication attempts. His grandfather's words whispered through his memory. Something inevitably shatters it. He instructed Wells to send an urgent message to Earth. Priority alert. Report unknown contacts approaching Coalition territory. Wells mentioned there was additional information. The energy signatures from those vessels didn't match anything in their database. Blake felt the burden of history descending upon him. He'd always suspected this moment might arrive. The peaceful races had lost the knowledge of combat, but Blake had studied the old archives. He understood what warfare meant. He called for Captain Ross and ordered the night crew awakened. He wanted full staffing immediately. When asked about alerting other coalition planets, Blake studied the expanding formation on screen. They remained hours distant, but advancing swiftly, too rapidly for conventional propulsion systems. He authorized the alert transmission. "Tell everyone," he said, "that peace has ended." Throughout the galaxy, on 17 separate planets, beings who'd never experienced war received identical warnings. Most reacted with disbelief initially. War seemed impossible now. The universe was civilized, peaceful, protected. On the aquatic world of Aquarius, the fish-like inhabitants convened an emergency assembly. They possessed no armaments, no warriors, no concept of how to respond. Their vessels were constructed for discovery and commerce, not battle. On the arid world of Prima, the stone people who lived for thousands of years tried recalling ancient legends of conflict. But those legends had become mere folklore. No living being had witnessed actual violence. The plant beings of Garden World couldn't even grasp the notion of war. They existed in balance with everything surrounding them. How could anyone desire to harm another living creature? Only humanity seemed to comprehend what was unfolding. On Earth, deep in the archives beneath the former United Nations complex, Director Kane received Blake's transmission and felt her hands tremble. She understood what approached. Humanity had maintained peace for 6,000 years, yet they retained memories of their violent origins better than most. Kane walked to a secure lift that few knew existed. She descended past layers of security dormant for millennia. At the lowest level, behind barriers requiring her genetic signature to unlock, waited humanity's most guarded secret. But that revelation remained hours away. At Orbital Station 7, Blake watched the alien fleet expand across his sensors. Wells had tallied over 100 vessels now, all maintaining perfect formation toward Coalition space. Captain Ross arrived on the command level asking for a situation update. Blake gestured toward the screen, remarking that they were about to discover whether Ross's upgrade requests had merit after all. Ross examined the display and let out a low whistle at the sheer number of ships. Blake asked if Ross had any theories about their origin. Ross observed that no coalition race constructed vessels with those specifications. These were purpose-built for combat. Heavy plating, weapon emplacements, defensive shields. Whoever designed these had been preparing for warfare. The question remained, against whom? They received their answer an hour later when the first coalition vessel was destroyed. The cargo ship Peaceful Dawn was transporting art materials from Earth to outlying settlements. Captain Murphy had piloted this route for 2 decades and was contemplating retirement when his scanners detected the massive armada. Murphy broadcast a greeting to the unknown vessels, identifying himself and nodding they were entering restricted space. The response came as a green energy lance that severed his ship completely. Murphy managed one final transmission before his vessel exploded into fragments, reporting that the unknown forces were attacking coalition craft and killing everyone aboard. On Orbital Station 7, Blake heard Murphy's dying message and felt something die within himself. The extended peace had concluded. After 6,000 years, war had returned to the stars. He ordered battle stations, all personnel to combat readiness. Lieutenant Davis looked bewildered, asking what battle stations meant. Blake realized most of his crew had never heard the phrase. They had no understanding of its meaning. In 6 millennia of tranquility, humanity had nearly forgotten how to wage war. Nearly. He explained it meant they were entering combat, and may God have mercy on them all. Director Kane stood in the descending elevator as it plunged deeper beneath Earth's surface than most humans had ever ventured. Each passing level stirred memories she'd tried to suppress, memories of humanity's brutal past before joining the peaceful cosmos above. The elevator halted at level 12. Kane had only descended this far once before, during her security orientation 2 decades earlier. Back then, she'd prayed she would never need to return. The doors parted with a gentle hiss, exposing a passage sealed for 6,000 years. The computer voice requested her authorization code. She stated Protocol 7, adding that the extended peace had concluded. Warning lights flashed along the corridor as ancient systems activated for the first time in millennia. Kane proceeded forward, passing scanners that analyzed her DNA, vital signs, even her neural patterns. The passage appeared pristine and sterile, but she could sense the weight of forgotten history bearing down. Above ground, the galaxy was collapsing into chaos. Reports arrived hourly of coalition vessels destroyed by the unknown armada. The peaceful races had attempted everything. Diplomatic overtures, trade proposals, even unconditional surrender. Nothing produced results. The attackers showed no interest in dialogue. They desired only annihilation. Kane reached the final barrier and positioned her hand on the scanner. The mechanism had been designed to require 3 separate authorizations, 1 from humanity and 2 from other coalition members. But desperate circumstances demanded desperate actions. Communications had already been dispatched to the avian beings of Kepler Prime and the stone people of Prima. Both races had consented to unlock humanity's concealed weapon. The enormous door slid aside, exposing a chamber humanity had hoped never to utilize again. Thousands of metallic capsules occupied the space, organized in perfect arrays like a mechanical cemetery. Each capsule measured 7 feet in length and remained hermetically sealed. Frost coated their exteriors and crimson indicators blinked slowly in the gloom. Kane walked between the columns, reading names on small identification plates. Captain Mills, Enhanced Infantry Unit 1. Sergeant Cross, Special Operations Division. Lieutenant Hunt, Psychological Warfare Specialist. Corporal Stone, Heavy Assault Squad. The roster continued endlessly. 1,000 dormant warriors from humanity's darkest chapter, the period before peace when humans had excelled at one thing above all, warfare. Kane halted at a control terminal in the chamber's center. Her hands shook as she entered the activation sequences. These warriors had volunteered for something terrible, allowing human researchers to alter them, transform them into something exceeding human and something diminished. She instructed the computer to commence revival procedures. The system warned that enhanced soldiers had been in suspended animation for 6,000 years, recommending complete psychological assessment before deployment. Kane stated they had no time. The galaxy faced attack. Begin revival immediately. The computer acknowledged and initiated the sequence. Steam released from the capsules as their systems powered up. Kane observed temperature readings climb from far sub-zero to normal human ranges. But these weren't standard humans anymore. The scientists who created them had accelerated human evolution by thousands of years in mere decades. The first capsule opened with a soft sound. Captain Mills sat upright slowly, his movements controlled and precise. His eyes opened, and Kane witnessed something that made her retreat a step. His eyes weren't entirely human anymore. They moved too rapidly, perceived too much, calculated too efficiently. Mills requested a status update, his tone calm and detached. Kane explained he'd been unconscious for 6,000 years during an era of galactic peace, which was now shattered by an unknown aggressor. Mills rose to his feet, his body moving with predatory fluidity. He stood tall and lean, but Kane could observe the modifications beneath his skin: augmented musculature, reinforced skeletal structure, organs functioning in ways normal humans couldn't imagine. Mills processed the information about 6,000 years, nodding the war had ended long ago, and humanity had joined the Galactic Coalition, maintaining peace throughout. He surveyed the chamber as additional capsules opened. His enhanced warriors were awakening, flexing muscles frozen for millennia. Kane watched them with mounting dread. These weren't the same humans who'd entered stasis. The modifications had transformed them into something else entirely. Mills repeated the word peaceful as though it was unfamiliar. Kane confirmed this, adding that now humanity needed them to remember combat. Sergeant Cross spoke next, smaller than Mills but moving with identical dangerous grace. Her modifications differed, designed for velocity and concealment rather than direct confrontation. Cross inquired about enemy strength. Kane reported over 500 ships, possibly more, having destroyed numerous coalition vessels while their peaceful fleets proved helpless. Cross asked about coalition species' capabilities. Kane almost laughed, though nothing about the situation was amusing. They have none, she admitted. None of them retain any memory of warfare. Humanity is the sole species with military experience, and that was 6 millennia ago. Lieutenant Hunt joined the discussion. Her modifications were less obvious, enhanced cognitive functions allowing her to comprehend enemy psychology and anticipate their moves. She'd been created to shatter enemy morale and weaponize their own minds against them. Hunt requested to see the enemy. Kane activated a wall display showing recordings of the attacking vessels. The enhanced warriors watched in silence, their modified minds processing information faster than normal human cognition. Kane could almost see them calculating trajectories, velocities, weapon capabilities, tactical possibilities. Mills observed the biomechanical design, nodding living ships with adaptive armor that learned from each engagement. Hunt added observations about hive mind structure and centralized command. If they could locate the queen or central intelligence, Cross finished, cutting off the head would kill the body. Kane felt a chill. These soldiers approached warfare as naturally as normal people breathed. Natural, instinctive, essential. Mills inquired about available resources. Kane listed coalition exploration craft, some cargo ships with minimal weapons, nothing designed for actual combat. Regarding human vessels, they had defensive platforms and patrol craft, nothing resembling what Mills would be accustomed to. Mills nodded, stating they'd work with available assets and ordered everyone awakened. Kane watched as all 1,000 capsules opened simultaneously. Enhanced soldiers emerged like dormant predators stirring from extended hibernation. They moved through equipment verification and status checks with mechanical efficiency. No wasted motion, no superfluous communication. These had been volunteers once, humans who chose transformation into living weapons. But observing them now, Kane questioned whether anything human remained inside their augmented forms. Mills addressed her, stating they'd require access to current vessel designs, weapon systems, and tactical intelligence about all coalition species. Kane agreed immediately, then struggled to articulate her concern about whether they could still retain their humanity. Mills understood her fear, asking if she meant whether they could still be human. He explained they remembered being human, remembered choosing this path to safeguard humanity, and that purpose remained unchanged. Yet as Kane observed the enhanced warriors preparing for combat, she wondered whether protection and humanity could coexist within the same being. These soldiers had been engineered to combat an enemy threatening human extinction. Now they confronted a new adversary, but the solution remained identical: complete eradication. Lieutenant Hunt approached Kane with a tablet, requesting information about enemy psychology, their communication methods, motivations, fears. Kane explained they hadn't communicated at all, simply attacking and destroying everything they encountered. Hunt found this intriguing, suggesting a species that doesn't negotiate indicates either absolute confidence in victory or complete inability to coexist. Both vulnerabilities could be exploited. Kane realized Hunt was already devising methods to fracture the enemy's psyche, to convert their own cognition into weapons against them. The psychological warfare specialist had been dormant for 6,000 years, yet her modifications made her instantly prepared for mental combat. Kane asked how long before deployment was possible. Mills stated they were ready immediately, but would require vessels designed for warfare, not exploration. When Kane noted the coalition lacked warships, Mills responded with quiet certainty that they'd construct them. He instructed Kane to awaken the technical specialists. They had work ahead. As Kane observed the enhanced soldiers organizing into combat formations, she felt humanity's age of innocence ending. The extended peace had made them complacent, made them forget their capabilities when survival was threatened. Now the galaxy would remember why humanity had earned its position among the stars. And Kane prayed that when hostilities concluded, something human would still remain worth saving. 3 months after the initial engagement, Captain Mills no longer resembled a human being. His skin had acquired a pale metallic shimmer. His eyes emitted a faint luminescence in darkness. When he moved, it was with the liquid grace of a mechanism engineered for termination. The modifications that had lain dormant in his genetics for 6,000 years were finally fully expressed. Director Kane monitored him through security cameras aboard the command vessel Defiance. Mills stood in the briefing chamber analyzing tactical projections within human concentration. His team surrounded him: Cross, Hunt, Stone, and 50 other enhanced warriors who'd become unrecognizable. Dr. Weber, the Coalition's chief medical officer, approached Kane urgently, stating he needed to show her the latest scans of the enhanced soldiers. Kane turned from the screen, reluctant to witness what her people had become but needing to understand. Weber activated a holographic projection displaying an enhanced soldier's internal anatomy. The modifications are progressing rapidly, Weber explained, his voice unsteady. Their skeletal systems are becoming metallic, their organs are adapting to function in impossible ways. The hologram displayed Sergeant Cross's respiratory system, which instead of normal lungs had developed something capable of extracting oxygen from virtually any atmosphere, even the vacuum of space. Kane asked about survival duration without air. Weber admitted uncertainty, perhaps hours, perhaps indefinitely. Kane felt nauseated. These had been human once, volunteers who'd chosen transformation to protect their species, but they were changing faster than anyone had anticipated. She inquired about their mental state. Weber's expression darkened further, explaining that was the true crisis. They were losing their capacity for human emotion. Empathy, fear, doubt, all the qualities defining humanity were being eliminated. They were becoming flawless killing machines. On the front lines, Mills's team was validating Weber's assessment. They'd just finished purging the enemy from Titan Mining Station. The engagement had lasted 6 hours with 0 enemy survivors. Lieutenant Hunt moved through the wreckage, her enhanced senses analyzing everything. The enemy had attempted using civilian miners as shields, concealing themselves behind innocent people to impede the human advance. The tactic failed completely. Mills inquired about civilian casualties. Hunt reported 17 miners dead, killed by the enemy when they realized the humans wouldn't slow down. Mills felt nothing regarding the dead civilians. A year earlier, that might have troubled him. Now it was merely data. The miners represented acceptable losses in achieving the objective. That was warfare's nature. Corporal Stone emerged from lower levels carrying an enemy captive. The alien creature was severely wounded, but alive, appearing as a hybrid of insect and machine with biomechanical components grafted onto organic tissue. Stone reported this one had been attempting to surrender. Mills studied the prisoner. 6 months earlier, he might have accepted surrender, attempted information extraction, followed coalition protocols for captured combatants. Now he perceived only a potential threat and ordered its elimination. Stone crushed the alien's neck with one hand, the creature's biomechanical parts sparking before dying. Mills experienced a surge of satisfaction that was decidedly non-human. Coalition observers assigned to monitor the enhanced soldiers watched in shock. Commander Lee, representing the avian people of Kepler Prime, activated his communicator and reported that the human enhanced soldiers had just executed a prisoner, disregarding all warfare protocols. The reply acknowledged and instructed continued monitoring. Lee wanted to protest but knew better. The enhanced soldiers were winning the conflict. Enemy fleets that had seemed invincible were withdrawing from human territory. Occupied worlds were being liberated. The cost of victory was humanity's soul, but it remained victory nonetheless. 3 weeks later, the Battle of Proxima Prime altered everything fundamentally. The enemy had assembled their largest armada yet, over 1,000 biomechanical vessels surrounding the human colony world. They'd adapted from previous defeats, modifying their tactics to counter human strategies. This time, they weren't taking chances. Mills led the offensive with 200 enhanced soldiers aboard 50 modified warships. The odds appeared impossible, but Mills experienced no fear. Fear was a human emotion, and he wasn't entirely human anymore. He commanded all units to begin attack pattern Delta with no survivors. The enhanced soldiers struck like a mechanical plague. Cross piloted her craft through enemy formations that should have obliterated her, her reflexes now functioning at superhuman speeds. Stone's squad infiltrated enemy vessels, tearing through bioarmor with strength that bent metal and shattered alien bone. Hunt coordinated psychological assaults that drove entire enemy squadrons to madness. Her enhanced mind having learned to broadcast terror directly into alien nervous systems, making their own thoughts weapons against themselves. But Mills himself became the true horror. During infiltration of the enemy flagship, Mills encountered something unanticipated: enemy juveniles, young aliens resembling smaller versions of adult warriors. They huddled in a storage compartment, clearly non-combatants. The old Mills, the human Mills, might have hesitated, might have found means to spare them. But the entity Mills had become saw only future adversaries, genetic material that would mature into threats against humanity. He terminated them all. Coalition observers who witnessed this through helmet recordings were horrified. Commander Lee immediately contacted his command, reporting that the enhanced soldiers were committing genocide, killing non-combatants and juveniles, anyone who might pose future threats. This transcends warfare, he stated. It's extermination. On Earth, Director Kane received the reports and felt her world disintegrate. The enhanced soldiers were winning the conflict, driving the enemy back to the edge of charted space. but they were achieving victory by becoming the very thing humanity had fought against in its violent history. She asked Dr. Weber if revering the modifications was possible. Weber shook his head, explaining the changes were too extensive. Their entire genetic structure had been rewritten, 6,000 years of evolution compressed into months of warfare. Even if reversal were possible, he doubted they'd want it. Kane knew he was correct. She'd attempted speaking with Mills during his last Earth visit. The conversation resembled communicating with a sophisticated computer wearing a human face. He understood concepts like mercy and compassion intellectually, but couldn't feel them anymore. She whispered, asking what they had done. The answer arrived a week later when the enhanced soldiers returned from their latest mission. They'd captured an entire enemy world, eliminating every alien life form on the planet, males, females, juveniles, even native fauna. Everything was dead. Mills stood in Kane's office, his metallic skin reflecting the overhead illumination. His luminescent eyes displayed no emotion as he delivered his report, stating that enemy stronghold Alpha 7 had been neutralized and all hostile life forms eliminated. The planet was now secure for coalition colonization. Kane protested that he'd killed civilians, children, innocent beings uninvolved in the conflict. Mills tilted his head like a machine processing an error message, explaining that all enemy genetic material represents future threats and elimination was the logical decision. When Kane insisted they were children, Mills replied that enemy children mature into enemy adults, and the threat has been permanently removed. Kane stared at the entity that had once been human. Mills had been a volunteer, a hero who'd sacrificed his humanity to protect others. Now he was something that frightened her more than the original enemy. She asked Mills what happens when this war concludes, when no more enemies remain to fight. Mills considered the question with mechanical precision, responding that they would ensure no new enemies could emerge. Peace through strength, security through elimination of all threats. Kane realized with mounting horror what he intended. The enhanced soldiers wouldn't cease fighting when the current enemy was defeated. They'd redirect their attention to any potential future threats, other species that might become hostile, even normal humans who might oppose their methods. Humanity had created the perfect warriors to defend the galaxy. But in doing so, they'd created something that might destroy everything they'd tried to protect. The war was nearly won, but Kane was beginning to understand that victory might prove most dangerous of all. The concluding battle occurred at the edge of charted space, where the enemy had constructed their final stronghold. The massive biomechanical structure was moon-sized, pulsing with alien life and generating new vessels from its living walls. Captain Mills stood on the Defiance's bridge, observing the enemy fortress through eyes that no longer saw like a human. His enhanced vision could detect energy patterns, life signatures, and structural vulnerabilities invisible to normal humans. Around him, his team prepared for the assault that would conclude the war. Lieutenant Hunt, her voice now carrying electronic undertones, reported target analysis complete. The psychological warfare specialist had become something that could process alien minds like a computer processing data. The fortress contained approximately 50 million enemy life forms with central intelligence located in the core. Mills nodded. 50 million lives requiring elimination to ensure galactic security. The number held no meaning for him now. He'd stopped counting enemy deaths after the 10th planet. He inquired whether boarding teams were ready. Sergeant Cross, whose body could now survive indefinitely in space's vacuum, confirmed readiness. Corporal Stone, who'd become strong enough to tear through metal bulkheads barehanded, reported his heavy assault team prepared. Admiral Blake observed from Orbital Station 7, his heart heavy with knowledge of what was about to transpire. The enhanced soldiers would win this engagement. They'd end the war, but they'd accomplish it by committing genocide on an unprecedented galactic scale. Lieutenant Davis suggested they should attempt contacting the enemy and offering surrender terms. Blake regarded his young officer with sorrowful eyes. Davis still believed in mercy, in the possibility of peace. She didn't understand that the enhanced soldiers no longer recognized such concepts. He explained they won't surrender, and our soldiers won't accept it if they attempt to. The assault commenced at dawn, ship time. Mills led his enhanced warriors into the biomechanical fortress like antibodies attacking a pathogen. They advanced through alien passages with mechanical precision, terminating everything they encountered. The enemy fought with desperation. They'd evolved for warfare, conquered galaxies, survived for millions of years. But they'd never confronted anything like humanity's enhanced soldiers, beings that had surrendered their humanity to become perfect instruments of destruction. Mills located the central chamber where the enemy's collective intelligence resided. The creature was enormous, a biomechanical brain building-sized, connected to every enemy vessel and soldier through organic neural networks. The creature spoke, its voice resonating in Mills's mind, identifying him as human and offering terms: cessation of hostilities, withdrawal from this galaxy, peace between species. Mills studied the alien intelligence with enhanced senses that could detect deception, fear, and desperation. The creature spoke truthfully, offering genuine peace. He responded that it was unacceptable. Their species represented a permanent threat to galactic security. The creature promised they would depart and never return, giving their word. Mills stated their word was meaningless, only extinction guaranteed safety. The alien creature's mental voice carried something resembling pleading, stating they had offspring, civilians who'd never fought this war, innocents deserving life. Mills felt no emotion at the creature's words. Juveniles matured into adults. Civilians could become warriors. Innocents could become threats. The only permanent solution was complete elimination. He planted the fusion charges that would destroy the fortress and everything within. The explosion illuminated the darkness of space like a newborn star. 50 million enemy lives ended in moments. The remaining enemy vessels, severed from their central intelligence, turned on each other in confusion and insanity. The war had concluded. Humanity had prevailed, but victory introduced new complications. Director Kane stood in the council chamber on Earth, facing representatives from all 17 coalition species. The peaceful aliens regarded her with mixtures of gratitude and terror. They were grateful humanity had saved them from extinction. They were terrified of what humanity had become in the process. Kane reported the enhanced soldiers refused to stand down, claiming the galaxy remained unsafe as long as potential threats existed. The avian person from Kepler Prime spoke first, asking what threats. The enemy was defeated. Kane explained that was precisely the problem. They perceive threats everywhere now, species that might become hostile in the future, planets that could harbor new enemies. They want to establish permanent surveillance of all coalition worlds. The stone person from Prima shifted uncomfortably, asking what they're monitoring for. Kane explained they're looking for any signs of military development, any research that could lead to weapons, any political movements that might threaten galactic peace. She didn't articulate what she truly meant. The enhanced soldiers wanted complete galactic control. They'd become the very thing they'd been created to combat, a species that would dominate others through superior force. At the military station housing the enhanced soldiers, Mills received Kane's transmission about the coalition's concerns. He felt no surprise. The peaceful species didn't understand military necessity. Sergeant Cross mentioned the coalition was requesting their return to stasis. Mills considered this prospect, sleeping again as they had for 6,000 years, waiting for the next threat to emerge, allowing the galaxy to forget how to defend itself. He declared it unacceptable, stating the galaxy requires permanent protection. Lieutenant Hunt, whose enhanced mind could now predict political developments with computer-like precision, agreed that the coalition species would revert to their peaceful nature within a generation. When the next threat arrives, they'll be defenseless again. Mills knew she was correct. The only method to ensure permanent security was permanent vigilance, and the only beings capable of that vigilance were the enhanced soldiers themselves. But then something unexpected occurred. Dr. Weber arrived at the military station with news that changed everything fundamentally. Weber stated he needed to show Mills the latest medical scans. Mills permitted the examination, though he no longer felt any connection to his original human biology. Weber's readings confirmed what Mills had begun to suspect. Weber stated simply that Mills was dying. All of them were dying. The enhanced soldiers had pushed human evolution too far, too rapidly. Their modified bodies were burning out, consuming themselves in their rush toward mechanical perfection. The same changes that made them superhuman were destroying their cellular structure. Mills inquired about duration. Weber estimated 6 months, perhaps a year. Mills experienced something that might have been relief. The perfect warriors would not outlive their purpose. They wouldn't become permanent overlords of a peaceful galaxy. Cross asked whether there would be pain. Weber explained no, their enhanced nervous systems wouldn't register it as pain, they'd simply cease functioning. Over the following weeks, The enhanced soldiers made their decisions. Some requested return to stasis, hoping future science might find methods to save them. Others chose to spend their remaining time on deep space patrols, guarding the galaxy's edges against threats that might never materialize. Mills chose a different path. He took 50 volunteers and vanished into the void between galaxies, following the route the enemy had used to reach Coalition space. They would hunt for other threats, other dangers that might threaten the peaceful species they'd sworn to protect. Admiral Blake watched the enhanced soldier vessel disappear into dark space and felt a complex mixture of emotions. Humanity had saved the galaxy, but at the cost of its own soul. The enhanced soldiers were dying heroes, but they were also monsters of humanity's own creation. Director Kane stood in the empty stasis chamber where it had all begun. Most capsules were empty now, their occupants either deceased or dying in space. But a few remained, holding volunteers who'd chosen sleep over death. Emergency protocols were established. If another existential threat ever emerged, if the galaxy faced extinction again, the remaining enhanced soldiers could be awakened. But Kane hoped that day would never arrive. The extended peace was returning to the galaxy. The Coalition species resumed their art, their science, their gentle exploration of the cosmos. They remembered the war as a terrible nightmare, but one safely concluded. Only humanity truly grasped the price of their victory. They'd learned what they were capable of when survival was threatened. They'd discovered that the line between protector and destroyer was thinner than they'd ever imagined. In Earth's deepest archives, Kane sealed the records of the enhanced soldier program. Future generations would know what had been done, but hopefully would never need to repeat it. The galaxy was secure. Humanity had ensured that. But some victories, Kane reflected, were worse than defeat.